In this video, I want to give a quick update on my budget version of Rush Draw Control. We've upgraded it a little bit, adding in some Elsas, but this did go from about a $100 and 20 version to about a $250 version after the addition of Elsa and a few other rares here and there, but overall it's not that expensive still for a pretty top tier deck. We're going to take a look at two matches, both against Ruby Emerald, which is a pretty tough matchup, to show you how I piloted this deck around some of the tough cards to play around, like the evasive cards and the Cusco. So let's go ahead and take a look at those matches. So I started recording this one about midway through, and it's after I and my opponent have both exhausted our entire hand, but I had the Ursula's Cauldron and I knew I was going to draw this Be Prepared, which is why I overcommitted to the board, because I knew I was going to wipe things out completely. And with the Cauldron up, I definitely have the advantage knowing what I'm going to top deck versus my opponent, who's just purely in top deck mode. This is what these Emerald decks do. They basically try to turbo out as much lore as possible and pressure you, but you can see here that we not only have the lore advantage, but we also have now the Cauldron in effect, which can generate us more card advantage because we can pick the cards like the Ursula, like the Maleficent, that's going to draw us more cards and maintain proper tempo of the match. And so once you get to this point in the game, there's almost nothing the opponent can do here, but you do face that early pressure early on. You saw there, if I didn't have this Cauldron or didn't get that Be Prepared up, the opponent had about 4 pretty big monsters on board to my like 2 smaller monsters, or characters I should say. But now we're in total control here. The opponent is top decking some of the green cards that are not great to be in top deck mode for, like they had to bounce back my Ursula. Now they're establishing a little bit of a board, and this is what this deck does. They just look for the pressure, but at 2 lore they're not really going to be doing much, especially with our Ursula on board. And I've made a couple of in real life decklist videos, but I haven't posted them yet because I just want to make sure that I get it perfect. But you're going to see me explain a lot about why Ursula is such an important piece to this deck. You can see in my deck list image that I posted in the beginning and linked in the description that I actually opt to play 3 Ursula and just 2 Elsa, because Elsa, it is good, don't get me wrong, and in a really competitive setting you might want to play more and maybe not as many Ursula, but you can see the pressure that Ursula puts on here, and it's such a big body that the opponent basically just can't deal with it unless they have direct removal, like targeting removal for it, because it's just going to keep questing for 3 with the shield. It's going to keep readying up to protect itself, and even though they have a Cusco on board, I'm just going to outquest you at this point, and that's exactly what you see me do here. We do end up getting the Aladdin, and it took me a little while to think through this, but I'm like, okay, I'll just get Pocket Watch off. I won't be able to use shield to ready it up, but that's fine because we're going to take out the Mulan, and then we're going to gain back 2 lore, make the opponent lose 2 lore, and we're going to let them keep the Cusco. It's not a big deal because we win next turn. They can't deal with the Ursula, and like, yeah, it's just, they just can't deal with it, like the pressure. So you see here the opponent's kind of just giving up. They're just throwing their stuff into my characters here, and we end up taking this one in a pretty dominant fashion. That's the power of the Cauldron. When you have it up, you can just set up your play so much better and just outgas your opponent from there, and that's exactly what you see here. So we flex a little bit, not too much though, but just showing the opponent that, yeah, we just have total control, and if the game runs away from them, they just auto lose, and that's how you deal with these Emerald decks. Just you control them early on, and then you just dominate them late game. So that was in the lab, and this one is on the ladder now. Opening hand not too great. We gotta hope that we mulligan into something good. So we put back 4 and we draw half decent duplicate shields and Mauis though. So I didn't cut out too much from this match because the thought processes here do matter a little bit. But you see me going first, which is good. We ink obviously one of our duplicate Maui, so we only got 2 left, 1 in our hand, 1 in our deck. But we opt not to go for Tibbs because we don't know what the opponent is on. So we're gonna go with the shield. It's always the safer play because the Tibbs is most likely just better off as ink in most scenarios. And this opponent on red, I'm like, okay, is it red purple? Most likely. That's, you know, kind of a popular deck. And then they reveal LeFou, and I'm like, okay, that's really odd because this deck doesn't really play that. But at this point, I'm not against a turbo aggro deck, so or at least I don't think I am. So I'm like, I don't need the Tibbs, let me ink it and let me set up the control match. I got the Maleficent, I've got the mirror, not that I'm going to use the mirror anytime soon, but I've got the shield. Then they revealed it on Emerald, so I'm like, oh man, another Emerald red deck. And this deck focuses on putting out cards like the evasive reds, and then just high questing green cards, so it's really hard to deal with for this deck. It is a deck in my opinion that counters the red purple control, but you're going to see again how we're going to be able to play around it. So you don't normally want to use your Maleficent to take out a monster because you want to save it for the friends on the other side, but we don't have that, so we got to stave off this pressure now that I know the opponent is on green. And I'm like, okay, yeah, now the Gastons have a lot of utility And you can see how threatening that Gaston is. The opponent has to use Mother Knows Best to bounce it back to my hand, because otherwise it's going to be taking out that Cheshire Cat for free. We top deck another Tibbs, and again, this card doesn't have that much value in this matchup. So we're going to go ahead and ink that. And now on 5 ink, I'm thinking, do I want to replay the Gaston? But then it's too slow. So now I can actually utilize that second Maui, take out the opponent's Tibbs, and then kind of force them to either out the Maui. And this is what I talk about again in my actual real life deck list video, which I'll go over in a little bit, or in the next video, sorry. But Maui always goes 2 for 1. So it just took out a card on the opponent's side. This is why Maui's so good. And now it's threatening to take out another card, which it's going to do here, right? Because the opponent couldn't get it off field. And if they did, they'd have to use a resource like a Dragonfire to take it out. So the Maui takes out the cat, and the cat takes out the Maui. That's fine. We're going to use Mirror to draw a card because we have trouble dealing with evasive cards in this deck. We need to use the Be Prepared. And so we're just going to hold, not play anything else, and hope the opponent commits something to board, and they do. We're fine letting them get to 10 lore. It's 10-0. But at this point, I'm like, okay, I've got to ink. We're going to ink that Gaston instead of playing it like last turn, because the Gaston can't deal with the evasives. And then we're just going to drop the Be Prepared. It would have been nice to drop the Ursula first and then sing the Be Prepared, but I don't want to let my opponent get too far ahead on the like 14 lore. And then they reveal that they were trying to play around the Be Prepared the whole time, because then they dropped Cusco, which obviously they had in hand, because they definitely would have dropped Cusco if they weren't trying to play around Be Prepared there. So they debated out the Be Prepared with the Cheshire Cat and the Goofy, which is pretty good. We dropped the Ursula, and this is how you know, yeah, the opponent was sitting on these Cuscos trying to wait for the baiting out of the Be Prepared. So it's not over yet, even though they have a lot of threatening force on board. Thankfully, we are able to grab a Rafiki here, and that is what we're going to use to take out the Cusco, opting to try to keep the Ursula in this scenario, and then we drop an Aladdin to take away a lore. And the reason I do this is just in case I want to shift into the big Aladdin to claw back even more lore, because again, the opponent does have double Cusco. Then they reveal another cat, a Tibbs, and a Duke. So they just dump their whole hand onto the board, because at this point, I guess they're just going for broke. If I had another Be Prepared, it would be GG. So we get another Rafiki here, and this is actually really good because I'm going to do the same setup. I'm going to keep the Ursula, and again, just like what I talked about last match, the Ursula is such a big body. Look how much utility it gets in just chipping away at opponents' characters, staying alive, still a big questing threat. We're going to dump the Elsa onto the board, which is also going to help lock down the board with whatever the opponent plays. So this Jasper, which is actually the most threatening thing on board, because it prevents my cards from questing. Well, I guess the cat is technically the most threatening because it quests for 2. But you're going to see us drop the Aladdin here on the shift, and then we're going to have to ink something. So we're going to have to be forced to ink the friends on the other side, because we're going to try to use all of our cards on field here. We're not going to sing the friends. So it's fine to ink it here because we're going to tap or exert the Elsa to get the Jasper exerted as well. It'll only do 2 damage to the Aladdin, but we're going to claw back from 18-0. We're going to claw back 2 lore, put the opponent on 16. We're going to go to 2. Then we're going to ready up the Aladdin with the shield. Then we're going to take out one of the 1-drops because there's no consequence of that really. We'll go on 4 damage, but we're going to once again claw back 2 lore from the opponent, gain 2 lore, and then just take out, I think, the Duke there with the Ursula. And again, Ursula being such a big body, look at it. Look at it, literally helped take out 2 Cuscos and then a 1-drop, and it's still alive. It's absolutely crazy. They top deck Dragonfire, which is pretty good. Because the Aladdin was going to take out the cat next turn if they try to quest with it. But they do quest with the cat, and I'm like, it kind of sucks that I guess I'll use the Dragonfire. But now that I have the Cauldron in play, you know, we're just all gassed up here. The opponent basically can't do too much. I mean, the Elsa is not getting the most utility right now because we are in top deck mode. So we do need another body on field to utilize that Elsa with, so that we can tap something and crash into it. But they have a Pongo, which is a crazy top deck. Thankfully, the Cauldron reveals a Be Prepared for us. One of the, again, huge benefits of Cauldron is ripping through your deck at lightning speed to get what you need. And so we don't play the Be Prepared. We want the opponent to keep questing and commit more to the board. They do reveal the Dragonfire, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. They're only on 5 ink. They go to 17. And I take a lot of time to think here, and I'm like, okay, another Be Prepared. Between the Gaston and the Be Prepared, the Gaston can't quest, so it's not putting any pressure. The opponent's already pushing game, so I'm better off taking the Be Prepared on top of the deck. So we go to 14, and I have 8 ink, and I'm like, the play here might actually just play the Mickey to bait my opponent into overcommitting to the board if they draw something. And then they'll play something on the board, they'll, you know, tap out and essentially go to 19, but then I'll quest with everything and then be prepared again. And then I have another be prepared in case they do drop another monster. So this is a risky play, but it does pay off. Again, I have the Cauldron and I have the Mirror, so I'm not feeling too bad. We draw Dragonfire, which is just extra insurance. So we quest with everything, and then we drop the Be Prepared, which takes out the Finn, as well as the Pongo, which we couldn't deal with because of the Evasive. We're not drawing into our Goofy to deal with it, so it's pretty tough. The opponent top decks another Finn, which is still game. We're going to use Cauldron first and probably take the Aladdin here. Yeah, and then we're going to go ahead, drop Aladdin and drop the Dragonfire. So it's actually pretty clutch that we drew that Dragonfire because we were able to play both those cards now on the 8 ink, 3 for the Aladdin, 5 for the Dragonfire. They top deck Jasper, which only quests for 1, so we're still pretty safe. I make a mistake here for some reason. I knew I had to shift in order to go for game, but for some reason I just got confused and just played it without shifting, so I gave my opponent a way back into the game. They took a very long time here, so I just skipped ahead, but there's nothing they can do, so they just quest, and then we're just going to take out the card with the Aladdin and win the game anyways. And that is how we played around the Emerald Ruby deck, coming back from like 18 to 0, right? It's absolutely crazy. But stay tuned for the real life deck profile. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.